Are you adjusting your estimates of when we're going to get to level 4? Curb to curb, no touch. I think we have a bet with Omar and Machine for May, right?
Yeah, it's one of those like as we get closer to the end, I will get more and more nervous on these things, and that usually means I might be wrong. But there's also the reality of we don't have any visibility. There's no new data. Things are progressing. We just don't have any data. It could very much come out and be pretty close to solved. I would say like the when I went on the ride with Omar,
We do have data, right? This is very similar to when you text a girl and she leaves it on red. She reads it but doesn't respond. That's the data point. That's an answer. It's very similar to that, where there is no V12.2, even though it was supposed to come out weeks ago. That's the data point.
who says it was supposed to come out weeks ago?
Um, I mean, come on. Are you telling me V12 is not delayed?
It's taking longer than we expected, but I don't
Okay,
think they
so
gave
that's
us a
that's the data
date.
point, right?
I mean, it's actually coming in pretty much exactly where we predicted. When we were talking about it last year, people said, "Oh, is it coming in a couple weeks?" We said, "Well, they're shooting to have it done by the end of the year, which means it'll probably ship in Q1." And here we are in Q1 and it's shipping. So I'd say it's pretty much hitting a normal target. I wouldn't say it's delayed more than I expected. Now, if we go past the end of Q1 and it's not wide released yet, then I would say, okay, yeah, it's probably been delayed a little bit.
Omar, are you adjusting your timeline?
Hold on, we're still on you. Don't skirt away. Do you still think we're going to have curb to curb, no touch? Let me find a bet. I see some wishy-washiness here. Let me dig in a little bit more.
I mean, what does this bet even mean? Because it can already do curb to curb without any touch sometimes today.
I don't mind buying Omar coffee, but buying machine coffee is going to really hurt. So I better not lose this bet. I don't think I've ever lost a bet to machine, so I don't want to start now.
Yeah, it might not happen by May, but I think this year is probably like, I mean, by the end of this year, I think it's going to be extremely impressive. That they could get to driverless level reliability by the end of the year is probably in the cards. I wouldn't say it's probably going to happen. Maybe I'd give it like a
Actually,
30%.
that wasn't Omar. Here's the bet at the top. Tesla FSD will achieve level 4 capability, curb to curb, no reg, in the US by May 2024. Yes, Meta and me. No, Machine
What does no
and
reg
Wes.
mean? No regulatory approval?
Yeah, like
Yes.
we're kind of
Okay.
excluding regulatory approval, exactly.
I mean, I would say it's kind of like already done this. You just need the reliability to be a little bit higher, maybe. But
So Omar's
yeah,
clearly the
Oh,
judge, and
there you
we've won.
go. There you go. We have Machine on here too. And Machine, look at that. Omar says we won. Give us our coffee.
I've seen the next generation of our politicians grow right in front of our eyes as these two people twist and turn and manipulate the words to make it something that it wasn't at the time. And at the time is L4 capable that this thing would drive from door to door, curb to curb, without getting in accidents at the same rate as humans. That was the intent of the discussion. And now you see these two say, oh, well, actually, it already does it. And we know it doesn't. And Meta's over here trying to figure out how he can get out of this bet right now.
well, it actually doesn't say
Maybe.
anything about the level of reliability. It just says L4 capability curb to curb.
That's
So, you could like I would consider that even though it's architected as a L2 system, you could just turn off the nag and it would literally be able to drive curb to curb. And I'd bet that it wouldn't get in an accident. Like this thing isn't trying to get into accidents that often. So pull that out to May even, you got to make sure you choose the bets carefully. Like I would maybe say like it could do it 100 times in a row or something, or even 10 times in a row. It could do a trip without intervention or something like that. But you know, it definitely does it. But the key is really doing it every single time, no matter what happens.
Do
So
you think
L4 gives you a carve out where the vehicle can basically say, I can do this or I can't do this. The reason why we picked this whole L4 curb to curb was that's kind of how you would describe Waymo, except that, you don't have to have the regulatory approval, so the human might have to sit in the car.
Can I just say one thing? This is a first in the space's history where Meta is on the speaker board talking his side of the coffee bet, and he's in live chat typing his side of the coffee bet at the same time, simultaneously arguing on both platforms. There you go, machine. You're losing the public relations game.
Well, I don't really care as long as the intelligent people in the audience understand the conversations that have been had over the past year and a half and understand that these people were talking about something that was going to get to the reliability of a human driver, and that was the intent of the bet. And now they're going back and saying, well, actually, if you just turned it on right now, it would be L4 and it would meet the bet. No, that was never. We all understand the SAE levels. That was not the bet. The bet was the competency, the reliability of the software, which of course, right now, it's nowhere near what it would need to be. And you have Omar saying, if you let it go right now, 10, it would do it 10 times, 9 out of 10 times, 99 out of 100 times. Those are still amateur numbers. And Meta, when you asked him, you brought this whole thing up with the bet, you could tell in his mind, I could read his mind, and he knew he was screwed. He knew he was screwed, and now he found some loophole to try to get out of it by changing the bet. No, I'm not letting you change the bet.
How am I changing the bet? The tweet has already been written. What I'd love to understand is what is the difference between L4 and L5 in your mind?
We're not right. I'm not saying that might just be domain, your ODD. We're talking about the reliability of the software, the ability to drive curb to curb.
Yeah, I mean,
At a
listen,
similar level as
you
human.
guys are kind of turning around circles. But first of all, there's still 3 months to go, 3.5 months. Okay. Secondly, I agree that there needs to be some sort of reliability metric here. I don't think Meta is arguing that we won the bet right now. Omar, do you think the software can do it 10 times in a row today? If not, do you think it will be able to do it by the end of May?
It depends on the drive, but certain drives, I think it could do it 10 times in a row. It obviously depends on where you are, that kind of stuff. But, I see here really like a lot of progress being made and people's just sort of dismissing it, right? It's kind of like, you have Steve Jobs come out and he say, you know what? A f- uh, in a few years, we're going to have an iPhone with 10 hours of battery life. And people say, get out of here. It only has 1 hour of battery life today. And then they put out an iPhone with 2 hours of battery life, and 3 hours of battery life, and 4 hours of battery life. And you got machines going, okay, sure, four is great, but it's not 10. Okay. We're talking serious numbers here. We're talking 10. And it goes five, and it goes six, and it goes seven. And people are saying, well, it's not 10. But you look at what direction it's going in clearly one direction, which is up. And that's kind of what I see with autonomy today. Like, I have access to a driverless service 24/7, 365 in my city. That was not the case. In 2021, I took my first driverless ride. I had to drive out to Chandler, Arizona. It wasn't even active in Phoenix back then. I had to drive hours to Chandler, Arizona to take my first driverless ride. Now it's available in my city. It drives right up to my house, right? With FSD, I've gone from, taking over all the time to barely having to take over. So it's really clear which way the momentum's going. Everybody's sort of dismissing it. They're saying it's never going to get there, but they just keep getting closer and closer. I mean, you can literally demonstrate driverless curb to curb bribes today with today's technology, and even with FSD 12, like technology you can get off the shelf. So I don't know. I don't know if it's going to take 1 more year, or 2 more years, or 5 more years. That's kind of, I think, what history's shown us is we don't really have a good way to predict these things. If there's some formula to calculate it, we haven't discovered it yet. But I'm not really too upset because I'm enjoying what we have and it's getting better quickly.
Meta, we have a question for you in the replies, and Omar. James says, my FSD beta 11.4.9 constantly kept trying to drive on the double yellow line in the snow. I'd like to know why it didn't stay centered in the lane. To see if V12 can handle snow drives.
Be pretty easy. We can't know exactly why without like having access to the logs and debugging it. but theoretically in V11, it wasn't trained to do that. Somebody didn't write a heuristic for that, etc. In V12, there can be emergent behavior that allows it to know that that's what people want, purely by saying, whenever I drive over the yellow line in the snow, a human takes over. And they can take those takeover pieces of feedback and it can slowly learn to do the right thing. So they're just two totally different approaches. One requires you to think of every possible scenario and tell it what to do in every possible scenario and write all those heuristics. And the other one only requires data. So I think V12 should be able to address it.
Omar, we're
Forget
gonna
about all your stupid problems with V11. V11 is a flaming pile of dog shit. When you post, why does it have an issue? It's like saying, hey, why does this piece of dog shit smell like shit? Well, because it is a piece of dog shit, okay? So they're literally throwing the entire thing in the trash. So some of the problems may carry over, but a lot of them will probably be resolved. So if V11's annoying, you just drive manually or take over, do the thing, then put it back on. And I think V12 is really going to surprise a lot of people. Number of long-standing issues that have been there for years that were fixed with this one update is like nothing I've ever seen. So I'm hopeful that a lot of people's long-standing issues, things like this, would be resolved with V12. I obviously can't promise that it will, but I think for a lot of the long-standing issues that people have, they will see a big improvement with V12, just based on what I've seen.
And as a reminder, like V11 was like V10 didn't have transformers. 10.6.9 technically, I think, started to have some. V11 is where they started moving the perception stack over and they started saying they were going to start moving more of the planning and controls over. And then some point along the way, they said, hey, why even bother doing these as separate models? Let's just merge it into one giant model. And then they've switched over to V12. I could see them in the future possibly switching approaches because the industry has kind of like started going towards more of a mixture of experts approach, which means you have many models that talk to each other. Either way, they never move the planner and the controls from heuristics fully over to a model in the past. So as long as people are complaining about planning and model or like safety related things in terms of the vehicle's route planning and how it handles controls in different scenarios, speed and things like that, those are all things you can expect improvements on. The rare situations, which there are some examples of, where the screen doesn't see something correctly and it actually sees it incorrectly, that's a scenario that probably won't improve. But I think it's something to be said that a few years ago, all the complaints were it didn't see a stop sign, it didn't see this, and now there's almost no complaints about vision.